Hey, hi, hello, welcome to episode 73 of Trail Society, produced by Free Trail, brought to you by the folks over at The Feed. I'm Corinne Malcolm.
And I'm Keely Henninger.
Keely, you're in a new recording location because you have, in fact, moved homes while we're trying to actively pack our bags for leaving the PNW to get to Transvolcania. Like, how are you doing?
Oh, that's the nervous laugh.
Loaded questions.
Not great. I unpacked everything yesterday so that I know where everything is. And now I will pack today, tomorrow. I did, in fact, find everything that I will need for the trip. So that is nice.
But, yeah, I haven't even done
definitely a bit of a
yet.
cluster right now. So I'm glad it's taper time. And I feel good otherwise. But yeah, this last couple of weeks have just been absolutely chaotic. And that's all I have to say about that.
Yeah. Yeah. Speaking of chaos, I was this past week, I think I was in Arizona for 36 hours to do commentary for Mount Fuji from Aravaipa headquarters from Mountain Outpost. And then I flew from there to Minneapolis to surprise my mom for her 60th birthday party, but surprise because her birthday was in September. So it was completely random, but it was really cool. My brother Tommy and I both made it in. And there were 30 people there besides us too. It was really sick. While I got shingles 10 days ago on my leg.
No.
And so I've been on it. I've just finished up antivirals last night. And so it's stress, baby. And I got a hole in my immune system. It's my third time getting shingles. And now I'm oh, okay, got to settle down. This is not perfect, but
yeah, okay. Yeah. All that travel, you're doing multiple ultra marathons when you do these 20-hour commentating stints,
Yeah. So trying to settle down. I only had a tiny bit of nerve pain. Actually really weirdly running in Arizona, and it's definitely from that nerve was just super inflamed, but I think it's finally on its way out. So hopefully no lingering stuff by the time we get to the island. But yeah, just add, that wasn't on my bingo card for a Transvolcania build, but it is what it is.
They're never perfect.
Back to the drawing board.
Although
constantly.
For our interview that we're going to get to later, sound like hers was pretty near perfect. So
canyons seemed pretty easy for Katie Schide, who we get to talk to today. One of the last pieces of the puzzle with packing is that I am waiting anxiously for a feed delivery to make it to my house with what will be most of my race nutrition. So got to give a shout out to our presenting sponsor, The Feed. Without this, it would not be possible. Without them, it would not be possible. Without their order getting to me before we leave on Sunday morning, my race might also not be possible. So if you too want to last minute order all of your race nutrition from one place and get to bring 4 different gels and different recovery products with you, you too can do that. You can be me. You can last minute order all of your nutrition needs. And you can do that by going to www.thefeed.com/Trail Society. And there you get an $80 credit to use over the course of the year, $20 allocated every single quarter. It's super freaking sick. Keely, you got all your race nutrition ready? Did it all make it?
Well, I'm definitely going to bring my water bottle. Shout out to Laura McGreen for shouting out Trail Society last week and all our water bottles. That was so fun. But my nutrition made it. I ordered a lot of goos before, and it's all here. So I'll be packing a lot of goo gels and some protein recovery mix. And then I really wish we could travel with waffles, but they will not travel very well because they need to be in a freezer. But I've got it all here. I just need to start sorting through it and then looking at, time charts and figuring out how long this race is going to take and figure out how much I need to bring.
Actually do the
I
little
should have done
details.
stuff a while ago.
I know.
Because I leave Thursday because I'm doing a mini bachelorette party before in Phoenix, and then I leave from Phoenix. So I need to have everything packed by early Thursday.
Little bachelorette party on your way.
Really trending to be really chaotic right now. But I think it's for me, how my mind works, having a really chill weekend with girlfriends that don't run before a race is probably best case scenario for my mental health. So I'm stoked.
That's super ideal, honestly. Well, let's dive into this. You put a bit of news into the outline that I thought was really cool. So give it a shout out.
Yeah, the sports bra, which we shout out probably every episode. or close.
At this point, we should be investors at this point.
I know, right? What did we do? It's a local Portland, Oregon bar here that plays mostly women's sports. Is going to be franchised by Alexis Ohanian and his 776 Foundation, where all the profits are going to be going to that nonprofit that's benefiting girls and women in sport. And so, what a cool venture! We just wanted to give them a shout out because that sports bar, the sports bra, has been growing a lot here in Portland, and so it's really cool that such a big investor took note and is now like helping them spread that vibe around.
Yeah, that same VC is actually also going to launch a women's only track and field meet this summer, where the amount of money on the line for the win in any event is like $60K. Like, it's really cool.
That's awesome.
So yeah, women's sports.
So they're investing. Yep.
You build
really
it,
cool.
They will come. Sick. Okay. Kind of rapid firing through some results that took place. It's race season. Things are heating up in a big way. We had 2 different World Trail Majors events, stop number 4 and number 5 on the World Trail Majors schedule, Mount Fuji 100 mile and the Madeira Island Ultra Trail, 115K. Courtney, I don't want to swear, DeWalter. It was really cool. I got to do commentary for the English stream of the event with Jeff Browning, which was really fun. Mm-hmm. And we watched her run her way to 3rd overall, actually overtaking 2nd for a little while. She finished 10 minutes back of the win. The 2 Chinese men in front of her, Dang and Chin, ran great races. And it was just really cool to see Courtney like slowly like reel them in. Because I think they had as much as like maybe a 40-minute lead, 45-minute lead on her, kind of going into the back 60 or 70K of the race. And she just like chomped away at it. It was really, really sick. And actually the 2nd place man in his interview, he said she could have beat me, but she knew that my pride was on the line. And he's like, she let me finish 2nd, essentially, which was pretty sick.
Yeah. I mean, well, I just did some really quick math, so it might not be 100% accurate, but you know how we always talk about percentage off of the lead male for the women? I know we did this for Canyons for Katie, but Courtney's like 1% off.
Yeah.
First, that's not even.
Yeah. So, and it's like maybe not the strongest field ever, but still like the Chinese athletes in the field were super strong. There are a bunch of really strong Japanese athletes in the field. Not a walk in the park. Courtney's obviously amazing, but yeah, phenomenal performance. I thought she could win the thing outright. If it had been any longer, I think she would have. It was really cool to see.
Yeah, really cool.
What can't she do? We are still working on figuring that out.
Oh my gosh. One thing though, she posted her feed fuel that she ate up till mile 75. And me being the fueling nerd that I am, because I knew people would want to know, I did the math. And you know what it came out to? Roughly 60 grams an hour. So for all of you people out there who are just looking for that, that deviation from the mean, who like maybe Courtney doesn't eat, and so maybe I don't have to eat. No, she's crushing it too. So please.
Yeah, still 60 grams. That's
prioritize your fueling.
60, and just to put that in perspective, 60 grams an hour, I think for 100 mile is like where you're running like fairly aerobically, probably works out pretty well. And that's also that also is like the high end of what we used to say. That's the high end of the old norm.
Exactly.
It's about 240, 250 calories or so per hour. So that's not crazy. Like she's eating consistently.
Yeah.
That's so cool.
So,
moving over from what was a warm, sunny race in Japan, to a very weathery PNW feeling brutal Madeira Island Ultra Trail. They've had better weather the last couple of years. And it was, I think they were in rain jackets from start to finish, basically. I think it got sunny around the port in the last like 10, 15 kilometers, maybe for at least for the women's winners. But it was pretty gnarly, and they had really good fields again this year. Ben Demon, who is American but lives in Europe, was cool because he's actually running for ASICS now. He ran for Hoka last year. Really cool to see him get an ASICS sponsorship. He took the win. It looked like Martin Kern and Anthony Costa, who are both French, I believe, finished in 2nd and 3rd, which actually I didn't realize at first, because I was like, oh, Sebastian Krovig, wasn't he 2nd? He was 2nd, but he was given a 1-hour time penalty sometime after his race concluded. So I don't know what happened out there. I haven't seen an explanation for it, but that brought him back down to like 7th or so in the men's field. So
what a bummer.
Yeah, major bummer, because I think otherwise it was pretty much a breakout race for him. So I don't know what happened. out there. On the women's side, Martina Valmasoy opened up her season after kind of like a disappointing UTMB where she did withdraw from the race. So it was really cool to see her take the win, but it was really tight. It was like 14 minutes between her and second place at the end of the day, which is fairly tight in like a 17-hour race over Annalisa Rosette-Sergo. Phenomenal French athlete, runs for Scott Sports, I believe, was second to Courtney at Hard Rock last year, leading the early part of that race. So she finished second. And then the ageless wonder, the Spaniard, I don't think she's Catalan. I think she's Spanish. Maite Maiori finished third. And she's one of those gals who's in her 40s, I believe now. And if she is running UTMB, she will be top 10. Like she's not going to be in the top 20 early on, but she will be top 10. Like when the race falls apart, she's there.
It's like Megan Arbogast that states.
Exactly. You can't. They're just gonna
always top 10, but started at like 50th.
Yeah, it's absolutely wild. So yeah, she was third in that race. Bouncing over to the Golden Trail World Series. It stopped in both Japan and China. The most recent race was in China this past weekend, where blazing fast times across the field. I think it was like a 22K with 1,500 meters of elevation gain and loss, and at altitude. It looked like it was going to be snowy up high. Grayson Murphy, who we've had on the pod, who's amazing, made her Golden Trail World Series debut, which I think we were all really excited about. Plus, she's had a weird year dealing with kind of a mysterious autoimmune condition. It's really cool to see her there. She ended up finishing third. Ahead of her were Joyce Mathuno Najiro, took the win. Maud Matthews was in second, Grayson Murphy in third, and it seemed like it was a really tight battle between her and the Spanish woman who finished in fourth position. And then she just had epic leg cramps at the finish line. I think she'd been dealing with cramps for the back part of the race, and she just like fell over and her leg like completely seized up at the finish line. It looked brutal, but I'm here for it. I'm here for Grayson Murphy being on the Golden Trail World Series.
Yeah, and it sounded like she didn't think it was her best performance either, so it's good. But it's good to rip the Band-Aid off, Yeah,
it definitely is ripping the Band-Aid off for her. I think it's been kind of a funky last year. So to see her back strong and healthy, it seems, is just, we're rooting for Grayson in a big way. On the men's side, Patrick Cabanegio won the men's race. I did Freak Trail Fantasy for this, and I actually didn't rank the East Africans that high because I thought the snow might be a factor in the race. I actually put who ended up finishing second ultimately, El Hussein El Azoui. He finished second. He's a really good downhiller, so I had put him in first. He finished second, and then Italian Daniel Pattis finished third, and it was just super tight all around. So I'm excited to see more and more of the Golden Trail World Series. They go to Zagama next before going to Mont Blanc Marathon in June. We got to talk about canyons real quick as well. Once again, very, very busy race weekend. It was cool. The women's side, Danny Moreno took the win in an insane 3:52. That meant she averaged 7:11 minute mile pace for that over some like very runnable, but but
a lot of hills.
Yeah. A lot of hills. Really cool. Jennifer Lichter finished second. I think she's about 5 minutes back or so. And then Tabor Hemming rounded up the podium in 3:59. So all of them under 4 hours. On the men's side, Eli Hemming continues his reign of terror on men's racing. Winning, I think it was 3:25 on the clock. He held off new teammate Danny Jones, who finished second, and then Cole Watson finished third. Impressively, Danny Jones and Cole Watson used this as a tune-up race as part of their build to Western States. So they're not really in 50K shape, and that's pretty impressive. I don't know. You're 2 or 3 minutes within striking distance of Eli Hemming. You're in pretty decent shape.
Pretty good shape. Yeah, for sure.
Yeah. Moving on to Canyons 100K. Rod Farvard finally.
Oh, I know. I texted him after.
Finally gets his big freaking win. It was so happy for that. I know he had a rough day at Black Canyon, and to see him do what I think we all knew he was capable of. The East Side had their day, and that was really, really amazing. 7 minutes back from him, Drew Holman had a pretty solid day, I would say. Kind of racing very patiently and then moving out of the chase pack and kind of trying to throw down in the back third of the race. Versus Petter Engdahl, who went out hot early, kind of had a really rough middle section of the race, and then clawed his way back to third,
Hmm.
which is absolutely amazing. And then I don't know if you've seen the videos from the finish line of Drew giving the golden ticket to Petter was really special.
Mm-hmm.
Tears.
Yeah. And I like, obviously Petter had a battle out there and probably hoped the day had gone a little better, but he got his ticket. And I think having a really big low in the middle of the race and fighting through it will be so helpful for states.
Yeah.
Like he'll have that recent suffering that he can draw on come states. So I think it will only help him.
Yeah, and Western States will be, if he finishes Western States, it'll be his first 100-mile finish because he dropped out of UTMB last year. Um, this is one of his longest races to date. He's done CCC. He dropped out of Madeira last year. So yeah, he's got to learn that suffering because Western States is going to be a battle. On the women's side, I mean, it was the Katie Schide show, I want to say.
Yeah. Just absolute terror. Like so fast. 8:30 pace for 100K over those trails. Like just absolutely bonkers. Like took some crowns from people who ran workouts on that trail, like running like 15 to 20-mile workouts, just like absolutely demolished it. It was so cool to watch.
And it was impressive. And she finished just under 5% back from Rod, I want to say. And I'm really good friends with her coach, Jason Koop, and I'm working on an article for Ultra Sign Up on their coaching relationship. And, he's told me over and over again, adamantly, Katie Schide does everything right. She's hyper professional. She shows up every day. She's doing all the little things. And that was really cool because it's like, oh man, like there's a lot of untapped potential in the women's field. And also just like, yeah, she puts her pants on like the rest of us in the morning. But maybe does it more professionally than the rest of us. And so it's kind of cool hearing that from Jason, like giving her kudos, but also being like, yeah, she does everything. She does all the little things. And that showed in a major way. She won by 50 minutes, finishing 6th overall.
So insane. Beating some really solid men.
Yeah. Can you imagine just like running by Adam Peterman?
Be like, oh, bye.
Dick Dolson. Like, hey guys.
Yeah. And they weren't having Tim wasn't having a bad day.
Yeah. Yeah. No. Yeah. Tim ran really well. It's just like, yeah, it was really impressive to see. And I just I hope she gets that kind of day again at Western States because holy cow, would that be sick. Yeah. And I mean, just hearing her talk about it too in the interview was so cool, and how her her whole mindset around training is just very impressive. She makes me want to be better. I know. Take it more professionally. Right? I'm like, shit. Wait, maybe that's just not for us. I don't know. Right? It's like there are things that I'm not going to change because there's a balance to my life that is important to me, but there's definitely things I could do to do better, I guess is how I'm putting it. And Katie Schide makes me want to do better. We'll see. Maybe this is the start of our revolution. To us all. Our revolution. But behind her, golden tickets on the line. MK Sullivan came back from a disappointing Black Canyons, 50K, 100K where she had to drop out due to an ankle roll. And Anna Cassius of the Bay Area stormed home for 3rd. She's been pretty close to golden tickets in the past, so that was really, really cool. Interestingly, I listened to the Subhub podcast today, and maybe we'll know the answer by the time this comes out on the 7th of May. But in their interview, she says that she's not sure if she's going to take the ticket or not. Yep. Which is very interesting. And I'm very curious to see what she actually does. So we have to give a special shout out because if that ticket rolls down, it's going to roll down to either Kareth Arnold, who finished 4th, 7 months postpartum. With her from her having her second child. Yeah, just I think she's Lottie Brink's sister-in-law, just super studly performance. And then Anna McKinney in 5th, and Anna McKinney has been in the 3rd place spot and 4th place spot, and or further back in the top 10 sometimes, but she has come up just shy of a ticket several times in the last 2 years. So it's if that ticket rolls, does Kareth take it, or is Anna McKinney finally going to get her shot? Yeah, there's going to be some drama. Okay, I can't wait. We'll keep you updated. When we know, you'll know. Before we dive into our amazing interview for today, we have to give a shout out to John Levitt over at For the Long Run podcast. I think actually when this comes out, my new interview
Mm,
over on John's podcast will have also dropped. So
cool.
you got to finish listening to our interview. But then for your long run this week, if you got a second long run, if you're getting ready for something else, go download that new interview with me over on For the Long Run Pod. Pop that in your ears. I think we make a lot of jokes about taxes, so I don't know, maybe it won't be relevant for you, but it was a delightful interview to do with John. You can or you could do the archival um, double feature, and you could go back and listen to episode 20 with me in my tiny little San Francisco apartment where we used textbooks to prop up the microphones before the fire alarms went off in my entire apartment building, and then listen to the brand new episode. So, again, that's over at For the Long Run podcast, exploring the why behind what keeps runners running long, strong, and motivated. Go give John Levitt's, I guess, like love note to the running community a listen. But I think we got to dive into this interview. And again,
Yep.
does Katie Schide need an introduction? We'll give her a little one because we told her she didn't have to brag about herself. Katie Schide is a professional athlete for the North Face and a smattering of other really cool brands. And while she's an American, she makes her home in the tiny hamlet of Mercantour in the mountains not far from Nice, France, with her very, very funny partner, Germo. Katie Schide is the 2022 UTMB champion. And last year, she finished second at Western States, despite breaking Ellie Greenwood's long-standing record. A little over a week ago, she blew us all away with her outstanding performance at the Canyons Endurance Runs 100K. And all I've got to say is, like, we're bringing our popcorn to Western States.
Hi, my name is Katie. My favorite color is purple. I'm from Maine. I grew up in Maine and then lived in Vermont and Utah. And in 2016, I moved to Switzerland to pursue my PhD in geology. It was there, not in Switzerland, but in Italy, that I met Geomorphic Granger, who was another trail athlete. And from there, kind of everything took off on the trail running side of my life, I guess. And I've been now in France for around 5 years, and in Europe for 8, which sounds like so much. But honestly, when I come back to the US, sometimes I do realize that it is a little bit of a culture shock for me. So it reminds me I haven't been around in a while. Other than that, I think one important kind of part of my background is that I worked in the White Mountain huts in New Hampshire. And that was like a really important part of me finding my kind of place in the mountains and realizing how important sort of that like connection to not just like a mountainous place, but just like an outdoor place, just like how important that is in my life. That kind of like shaped a lot of the decisions I made moving forward. So I guess that's a pretty brief overview. And
Yeah, we'll talk more about the whites, and we'll remove the what's your favorite color question from our rapid fire round. So
Okay.
we've got you on the record with
I
purple,
knew
which
you
is
were going to want
convenient
to know.
because the North Face kit now this year is pink and purple. It's really cool.
I know. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm a tiny bit jealous. We have a tiny pop of color this year with Adidas, and it's not enough color. Okay.
I'm very jealous.
Yeah, we're jealous.
The
Team
Germans
pink.
are like pink. That's way too crazy.
It's okay. We launched our shoe on April Fool's Day, and I was like, wow, couldn't even teach the Germans humor. This is great.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, while you're American and we wholeheartedly claim you as one of our own, every chance we get, be it, rocketing to the top of the UTMB podium, or when you come to race stateside, we're like, she's ours. You can't have her back, but we'll let you reside in France. I guess we're really curious. You grew up in Maine, you grew up on the East Coast. We got a lot of East Coast listeners too. Like our podcast kind of spans the globe right now, and we've got a lot of solid East Coasters. And so while your trail running, it sounds like really took off in Europe, your love of the mountains grew in the whites. And it seems like that's something that your parents share as well. So we'd love to hear a little bit more about growing up in the Schide household and maybe how that, spurred your love for spending time outside.
Yeah. I mean, small corrections, the Hart/Schide household, because my mom's last name is Hart. And it's actually funny because she's much more like active in the community. She's actually the mayor of Gardner.
No way.
Yeah, for many terms. And so a lot of people in town, at least when I was kind of coming back when I was in college, who maybe didn't know me and my sister growing up, like thought that that our last name was Hart. They thought like the name of the family was Hart. So if that gives you any indication of like my mom's personality. Growing up in Maine, I guess our family grew up like doing normal family outdoor activities, nothing like endurance focused. Neither of my parents are really like, not in any like insulting kind of way, but neither of them are really athletes. And so we just, did our normal camping trips, hiking around. But I think hiking was something that really, like kind of caught my attention, I guess, as a younger kid. And I was always asking my dad to take me on trips. And we did a lot of just me and my dad trips on the weekends when I wasn't busy with other organized sports. And then in high school, we section hiked the Long Trail together over 3 summers. We did like 1 week each summer and did the 273-mile Long Trail. And that was just super cool. I mean, I just loved that whole experience so much. I think I loved the planning almost as much as the actual trip itself. Like I loved looking at the map and seeing where we were going to sleep and like how far we were going to hike each day, planning the food. Basically like, when you're planning your ultra aid stations. That was like a really big part of my growing up, and of course hiking in the Whites as well. And then when I was in college, I applied to work in the White Mountain huts that I had actually visited already with my dad in high school. And I got the job, and it's still like, I think the best job on earth. It's hard to even call it a job. It's more like this
it's like adult summer camp, it feels like.
Yeah, it is. It is adult summer camp.
College adult summer camp.
It's interesting because it's you have so much fun and so much freedom, but you also have so much responsibility. And it's trying to find this balance between the two, where you're alone, like sometimes alone in a building with 5 other of your like best college friends, just access to just the most beautiful place, one of the most beautiful places on earth, in my opinion. You have like a full kitchen just filled with food, just so many like fun things that can happen. But in 1 second, you can have a radio call saying that there's somebody having a heart attack 2 miles down the trail that you have to go evacuate, either like in a sled, like carrying them, or like the helicopter evacuation, or you get a call in the middle of the night. You're woken up at 1 a.m. and there's a lost hiker somewhere. And then you're there with your friends and you're packing your bags to go with the radio to go find them. And so it can very quickly go from just totally carefree, like kind of Lost Boy, Peter Pan style living, to like, okay, this is really serious. We need to, really bring it back down and like focus on something more serious. So I think we all of us who worked this job we just gained so much sense of like responsibility, and also just confidence that you could like adapt quickly to any situation. And it's something that at the time I think I didn't appreciate or didn't realize was happening, but moving on with my life following the job, I can see now in different situations, like where I had a lot of confidence to just like do something new. Because, for example, on my like first cook day in the huts, which is when you're the one cooking breakfast and dinner for up to 100 people by yourself. My first cook day, I was 19, and I was just left alone in an industrial sized kitchen. This is before we had like, cell reception in these areas. So it's not like I could just Google search like how to cook chicken for 100 people. So you're there with the cookbook, and then you got the day and you got to get it done. And it just makes you just find a way to do something. Like no matter what that way is, you have to be creative and you have to be confident in what you're doing. So I think there's a lot of parts of the job similar to that. That's probably like the easy example to give.
That makes ultra running seem very simple. You're like, I'm gonna tell Kim and Topher that it's gonna take me X number of minutes to get from point A to point B, and then they're gonna be there and we're gonna change packs and it's gonna be great.
Yeah. And if something goes wrong, I will confidently like make a decision to do something else.
Yeah, I love it. Keely has something flagged as she's labeled your dad as a cool dad. And I'm wondering if Keely wants to add to that at all. But your dad is officially cool, it sounds like.
Well, I'm just kind of quoting Katie because she called her dad cool dad, which I'm so jealous of their relationship. It looks so fun. But yeah, it sounds like, you guys have evolved to like doing things as child and father to like going and doing that whole trail together. And now it seems like he's one of your like biggest supporters and crews. And so just kind of wanted to hear about how he's like played a role in your running career and how that is now.
Yeah, I'll give you the story on Cool Dad. It's because when I got my first cell phone, Motorola Razr, in high school, I think he bought it, he got it at the store and then gave it to me. And in between those two steps, put in his contact. I think he only put in his contact before he gave me the phone. And he put his name as Cool Dad. And it has lived on in my phone as Cool Dad since I was, 16. So that's why he's Cool Dad. He's not that cool. He's really on the dad side, which
I love that though.
He was out at Canyons though for your kind of pre Canyons training camp. And I think you guys did the same thing last year before Western States. You did your own Western States training camp. And I think it was like you and your dad out, like he'd be your person to drop you off and pick you up and drop off aid, etc. So it seems like, while it doesn't sound like they make it to Europe to support or see you race, it seems like getting to come back stateside, he's been an important part of the Western States journey anyway.
Yeah, that's it. They haven't ever seen me race in Europe. So when I came last year to do Western States, they were just like, we can help you with anything. Just like tell us we feel like we missed so many years of this. Like we want to kind of try to make up for some of it. Mm-hmm. So when I was planning to do sort of this like mini training camp in Auburn last year, I asked him like, can you come out for a week and just like drive me around and bring me water in random places for a whole week? And he was like, yes, I'm there. So that's been really cool. And then when he comes, he's just like fully committed to doing that. Even last week, he was just like, I'm here to work for you. So just tell me where to drive, what to buy at the grocery store. So I think you guys know how helpful just those small things can be when you're like, oh no, I forgot that one thing at the grocery store. It's going to take me, 25 minutes to drive there and back. Can you just go get it? It just takes a lot of that like last minute stress off.
I think you get some bonus points from the cool dad side. And I totally understand parents coming to Europe to crew can be a nightmare, but my mom loves to travel. So my mom will come to my races, but she just like hires a driver for the day, and the driver's local and takes her around to like checkpoints and just other random points on the course so that she can cheer and experience it. And then someone else is my crew. And it's like a great balance. Keely's mom's coming to Transvolcania, I think.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, cool.
Yeah. But like, I would not trust her with a pit stop. So she's just going to come and spectate as well.
Yeah. I'm also lucky that in France or in Europe, I have Charmant's parents who have so much experience around races. Like I think his dad, actually, for sure, his dad has crewed me at more races than anybody else. Wow. So yeah. And of course in France, it's easy because they speak French. They know the UTMB course by heart. They've crewed us there so many times. So that's like a good plan when I'm in Europe too.
We got competition for cool dad awards. Well, we asked our audience actually too what they were most curious about, which is great because it kind of helps to kind of set up what we're going to talk about. And they're super curious about your training, which makes sense, right? We get to watch you put together these incredible performances, and it's like, well, we can stalk you on Strava, etc., but it doesn't always paint the picture. And when I reflect back on your entry into the sport, and I would love to kind of have you reflect back on, you went from being a PhD student, getting into trail running, defending a PhD, now you're a full-time professional athlete. And I'm wondering how that relationship between like how you view your running and your training, how that's evolved as you've gone from kind of it being something that you're doing alongside another career path to like it being the focus. Maybe it hasn't evolved. You're like, this is easy. I just really like running.
Yeah, I do really like running. I think that there's sometimes this everyone's always trying to ask the questions of people with like, quote unquote real jobs. I consider
running a real job.
What I do a real job, but people with like jobs that have like a time schedule or a place they need to be. And they ask them like about balance. And there's always this like, oh, can you find balance? And I got asked that a lot when I was still doing my PhD. And I think the really honest answer was that I had no balance. I was just like totally invested in running and was just trying to like do the bare minimum to maintain getting the PhD done. So there was no like special balance. It was just surviving the PhD and then like focusing on running. What finishing that has given me is just more time and more flexibility to like, for example, be in Flagstaff for 2 months. I had a bit of that at the end of my PhD when I finished all my lab work and had no ties to the physical university anymore. And my supervisors were super understanding and like let me kind of do my own thing and finish writing from wherever I was. So I was really lucky that I had people who understood where my focus and passion was. Otherwise, I probably wouldn't have finished, to be quite honest. They were just really encouraging. And like, I never felt like they gave me the option of just stopping, almost like an ultra race. They just like kept supporting even when it wasn't, even when I knew it wasn't maybe my 100% best, but they
just make it to the next checkpoint.
Yeah,
exactly. We were just like, you already did so much. Like, let's just keep pushing this. And I did eventually get it done. And it was very painful at the end. And, but yeah, to answer the question, the focus has always been more on running. But yeah, having more time and space has given me like just more flexibility and like a bit more freedom in exactly how I want to do things.
I mean, I think people will like relate to that though, because that happened during the pandemic for so many people. Even though they're still working, they were working in a different capacity. And a lot of athletes that I work with, their training didn't change, but they had more time to like recover or rest or like make food or fuel themselves properly, et cetera. And so it sounds like running's always been that focus for you, but the PhD being done allows you that extra flexibility that just makes training probably feel a little bit not easier, but maybe just more fluid.
Yeah. And for sure. There was always that, like when I would go for a run in the morning, like, okay, I have to get back to get on the right train, to get to work on time, to like be at the right meeting on time. And now it's like, okay, if I'm 5 minutes late and I don't have like a meeting later in the day, it's okay. I'm not stressed.
I feel that. I like, just due to life stuff and like traffic, I started my run a little bit late this morning. And so I cut my run a little bit short. And it was just like, I got the most of it that I could in, and that's life. But I think that, yeah, it's kind of cool.
Yeah. I actually just like one thing I'll add to the earlier comments is just, it does sound like when I say it like that, it sounds like, oh, it's so nice now and like easy. But in moving from being like an employed researcher to shifting all the focus on running or like sponsorship, that does mean you have to assume the stress that comes with your performance dictating like your finances. And that can be super stressful. And it's something I think that having Xiaomo like with me every day and like us going through that together has brought me a lot of stability, because it lets us like see like more broadly the situation. But I think that's not talked about enough sometimes, is like when people switch from having some other type of employment to like being employed through their sport. Now your like passion and maybe your hobby too are like, that's your job now. And it's sometimes difficult to be on the start line when maybe you've been dealing with other stuff behind the scenes that you're not like sharing on Instagram. And just, having to really like separate those things. That's still like something I'm working on, but that I've gotten more comfortable with over the years.
Yeah, I would love to like dig into that for a second. Cause you're right. Like people are like, you're a professional runner. Like that's so cool. Like what a wonderful, awesome job. And there are definitely things that are awesome about it, but you're right. Like it's not just a hobby. It's something that also represents your livelihood. Have you guys found ways to, I don't know, make that feel more digestible on like the harder days or the harder sessions, or where where low motivation moments might come into play?
I think that like my kind of motivation and passion for the sport are like so different from that side of things. And I think that's like a strength that I have, is that I am just like, I'm so excited about just doing like training and racing, that I can kind of separate it, because I know, okay, if this wasn't my profession anymore, I would still just like find some other profession and keep doing it. So I think I've been able to like think through that in my head and know it's not like all riding on, my performance on a single day. But I think just, it's mostly just being able to kind of say, you just have to be able to separate, like on race day, you have to like empty everything else from your head and just remember like exactly why you're there, not because you're wearing a certain product or because you have some certain sponsorship, but because like yourself genuinely really wants to be there. And that's like the most important thing for me when I'm standing on the start line. I'm not thinking about that stuff, even if there's been things happening, which I don't want people to think I have like tons of issues with my sponsorship, but it's just that those things always come up. There's always something happening, moving parts. And so it's mostly just about like making sure you have your like reason or your like your own internal motivation.
Yeah, that
Totally.
why is so important.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think I got a little bit tied up in that over the last couple of years with states, which is why I think ultimately decided to take a year off. Was like, I mentally wasn't in it enough for myself. It was just all this pressure from like the sponsors to be like, you must go back. And eventually you're like, but I don't know if I want to go back. And that's just a really bad reason, right? So I can resonate with this so much. I had one quick follow-up around this, and this is something I experienced. And so I'm just wondering how your experience was. Like going full-time running, all of a sudden I didn't have a cop-out. I didn't have, a 9-to-5 job that I could say, oh, I was working really late that night. Like this training block wasn't that great because I had all of this work, or, all of these things that were easy to not use as excuses, but just have as reasons in case it didn't go well, like in case a race didn't go well. And so I wonder for you, if like once you did take that leap, was it really hard to not only like not have those to lean on, but also like allow yourself to just do running, which, like you said earlier, is enough to be a full-time real job. It's just like, it's not what you'd been doing for so long.
Yeah, I think that's like that's the main point, is like once you commit to that, you're risking, I mean, you might feel like you're risking everything because you're totally putting yourself out there with zero excuses. And I think that's one of the reasons why, like, well, I don't know if this is the reason, but in Europe, I think you'll find fewer athletes who will tell you they're professional athletes. Mm. Whereas I feel like when I come to the US, I feel like there's way more people who would introduce themselves or like define themselves as a professional athlete, even if they have like a part-time job. Mm-hmm. Whereas in Europe, if you're working like 2 hours a week as like a physiotherapist or something like that, they would say, oh no, I'm not a pro athlete. I have a job, even though they're working like 2 hours a week. Huh. Interesting. I feel like there's this like, oh no, mm-hmm. I still have a job. Like, don't put me in that bin. But it's just different to see the different approaches in the US and Europe. And I don't think there's no like there's no like correct definition. So it's just about, I think, how you see yourself.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah. And there's a number of interesting like sociological things I think that go along with it too. We've seen in the US for a long time in various sports. Like I come from cross country skiing and biathlon, and all the women on the ski team had a college degree, and one man on the ski team had a college degree type of thing. And it was like, we did that in road cycling. We see that across the board, where it's like, there's all these like very academically and career-wise, like put together accomplished women who then like come into professional athletics versus the other way around. And I think that that's just like, I don't know, something that we're slowly still uncoiling here, I think, particularly in the US, but I think that exists in Europe as well.
Yeah, Katie, I'm wondering if you've had experience with any sort of like gender disparity in sport being in Europe, because I studied abroad there. Again, this was a while ago now, almost 10 years, but I noticed how like non-confident a lot of the women were in their ability to do sport, even women who were on the Spanish Olympic team, like, because I was in Spain. And so you were just saying how a lot of people will say, oh, no, I have a full-time job. Is that more in the female space? Like, are they more unwilling to admit that they're a professional athlete, or do you see it kind of across the board? And have you experienced any sort of like gender disparity across the athletes in the countries you've lived in?
Yeah, that's, I mean, what I was saying about people trying to claim that they are not professional athletes when I would maybe define them as a professional athlete. That's across the board.
Okay.
But there's definitely like way fewer women, not only like, not even talking about professional sport, but just like women who do sports. And this is like my own interpretation of the situation, is that in the US, we grew up playing sports in school. Like everyone played in their rec soccer league or basketball league. You played on your middle school softball team. And it's just normal. Like most of the kids in the school play like some sport because it's just like integrated into the school. But in Europe, there's no like team sports at school. So if you want to do a sport, you have to play a club sport. I'm saying Europe. I only have experience in like Switzerland, France. I think Spain is similar. Italy, maybe in other places it's a little different, but generally, yeah, you have to go to a club sport, and then the school, because the lunch break is so long, the school doesn't end until 5, and then your parents have to drive you somewhere, and then you have zero time to do homework. It's not normal to play sports, so your teachers are probably telling you, oh, you're wasting time playing sports. This isn't like good for your school. I'm also like, I have a lot of experience talking with Xiaomo and hearing about his experience. And yeah, it's just, so you just don't have as many kids playing organized sports. And I think that when they become adults, you just see it magnified because nobody has the confidence because they didn't, run track in middle school and say, oh yeah, I actually do know how to run. Like I ran all those races in middle school. Maybe I'm not like going to be a professional track athlete, but I can go for a jog down the street. And you just don't find people who really do things kind of recreationally because they just didn't grow up doing it as kids. And there's really very few women doing sports in general compared to
We've got some work to do. We've got some work to do.
You can look at the start, like the results of any race in Europe. It's really sad.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, we've had that issue at UTMB where like the women's starting field might be like 8 to 10% at most women. So we've got our work cut out for us. And that's okay. I'm actually curious. You recently told me that you're like not a rainbows and unicorns type athlete. But I'm actually really curious because like we come from the country of like everyone gets a medal, everyone gets a trophy, like participation awards. Yes. And I'm actually curious, now like listening to you talk about, kind of this European experience, reflecting on like, do you think you've always been not a unicorns and rainbows? And this is like in relation to coaching, I guess, but person, or do you think that like your experience in Europe and like influence like with Guillermo, like do you think that also kind of maybe like colors that a little bit?
I think that I had some really, really wonderful coaches growing up who are not, I mean, I'm from New England, so they're not
rainbows and unicorns people.
No, it's a bit more real. Yeah, I grew up in New England, and like I probably the most influential coach in my like growing up was my high school field hockey coach, because field hockey was like my main sport growing up. And she was not like, there was no compliments unless something was really good. And then it was not delivered in like an enthusiastic way. It was just like, that was good. And for me, it was something I responded to super well. I know not everybody, I realize not everyone in high school responds to things like that well, but it really worked for me. And when I look back on that, I'm like, yeah, I can see now why that coaching worked so well for me, because I'm someone who doesn't need any external motivation, and I will always be my biggest critic. So I don't need somebody else to like hype me up. Like I'm gonna rip myself apart on my own. So when someone gives you just like a calm, like that was good, that's like I mean, for me, that's just the best thing ever. And
It all makes sense.
I had another club field hockey coach who was very similar, and both of those coaches just, I felt really, it just felt really good on those teams.
That's really funny. So Abby Hall and I joke about Jason Coop in this way, where we've both like, and he's never coached me, but we're just like close human beings. And we joke that you get like one of two responses from Coop when you've done good or when you've had a hard day. It's like you get the like, it's okay, kiddo type of response where he's just like, he knows that you had a hard time. Or you get like the proud dad Coop, which is like a very specific but still subtle, like you done good. And so this all tracks. This all makes sense. It really like I can see where the two of you jive in this like, you know, you're not in the passenger seat. Like you're kind of help like very much helping to steer that ship.
Yeah, the Coop comments just like from the beginning, they just worked so well for me. I mean, basically the lack of comments is something that works well for me. Like I'm going to write my own comments and I don't expect to get like a cheerleader on the other side. I appreciate just like, that was good. Or like the other one he'll do is just like punching the clock if it isn't that great. just like, you got it done.
Getting it done.
Some days it's just about getting it done.
Oh, I love it. I love it so much. He did tell me that if he found a unicorn, he would let me know.
I don't think there's any unicorns in his van.
No, definitely not. I'm wondering, you know, was there anything, I guess, that surprised you in that dynamic or has surprised you as you've continued to work together over the last 3 years?
I think from the beginning, I'm not sure if it was a surprise, but I think what the biggest like shift for me, I guess, when we were first working together was just, it felt like suddenly, I guess it also lined up with when I was finishing my PhD. I guess I finished my PhD like 6 months after we started working together. And I just felt like I had someone who was kind of treating me in the way I was treating myself. Like we were both holding me to a high standard. And when I took something seriously, it felt like, I felt like he was taking it seriously too. So sometimes, especially because our sport is still like very niche and sort of like on the outskirts of like road and track running, I think people think it's still really like laid back and we're just drinking beers in our trucks, which is not the case at all if you're looking at the front of the elite field anymore. And I just felt like he approached everything in the same way that I did. Like if I was taking myself seriously, like really focused on something, like he was in the same, like he had the same mindset, and that it just made me feel like confident in all the decisions I was making. It's like, okay, I have someone who's like taking this the same degree as me.
Yeah, who's serious and like sees it in you, recognizes it in you, and is going to help put the puzzle pieces together. I think Keely wanted to kind of dig in a little bit to kind of like some of those, like putting, like actually connecting all those puzzle pieces.
Yeah, I guess like there's a new kind of, I don't know if he calls it like a performance coaching team or something, but do
like
you take advantage of like other professionals as well to help you with your planning? Or are you kind of just like, I have my coach and then we figure out everything together? Like, do you have a dietitian on your team to help you figure out your fueling, or anybody like that?
Yeah. So like kind of going back a bit, before I even started working with Coop, the first person I had outside of my like normal coach was a sports psychologist. I had a lot of trouble at races, I guess from like 2016 to 2020, around right before COVID, or around COVID, I guess. I think I started working with her in 2020. And that was like the first step for me, because I realized that I had just had so much anxiety around racing. And this was before I was even, like fully professional. So I knew that I wanted to be like a full-time professional athlete. And I realized that going to a race with that much anxiety was not going to work if that's what I wanted to do. So she was the first person I contacted. And then through her, I was linked up with a nutritionist because she wanted to make sure that like some of my anxiety wasn't also linked like to physical things. And so I was working with them for a few years, and just like some things turned over, and now I've transitioned to working with a different sports psychologist and a different nutritionist. But yeah, now they're all like kind of linked together through the new like CTS structure. So that's actually been nice, because before I was just kind of like separate people I talked to on occasion, and now it's a lot more coherent and everyone's kind of on the same page. It just makes things more efficient.
I guess something that I would love to ask you about, besides the efficiency of getting to text a bunch of people, but kind of like going back to the home front a little bit. I know we're bouncing around, but I think it all connects eventually. We talked to Grayson Murphy about this actually too, whose partner is also a professional athlete, but in a different sport. And while you said that balance doesn't always exist, I'm wondering like how does balance show up in that way? Maybe like balance between, your running, your profession, and like showing up at home, showing up in your relationship, supporting each other. Because that's really hard.
It's really hard. It was a lot easier when we were because we used to do more sky running, and that's a lot easier when you don't have any aid stations, and when the race is done, not like in less than a day, and just everything is a bit simpler. Not the race itself. I don't want like to say that sky running isn't difficult. The race itself is extremely difficult, but like kind of the planning around it is a lot easier, being like two people together. But now, it's a lot more complex because races require more preparation and more planning. So I think what we've gotten a lot better at the last like 2 years, I guess, is just kind of letting each other do our own thing and just like supporting what the other person wants to do, but not necessarily having to be on site. Like, for example, obviously right now I'm in Flagstaff and Charmel's at home, and he'll go to Cortina ahead of Lavaredo, I guess, at the end of this month. So we'll be in our own places, but we know that that's like, it's really important for both of us to just like pursue what goals we have. And then if that means we're not physically in the same place, it's still, we just know how, I guess, because we ourselves know how important our goals are to us. Like I know how important, Lavaredo is going to be to Germain, and I can respect the fact that we can spend 2 months apart. If that means we spend 10 months like in the same tiny space. So we've gotten, I think, just more comfortable being like, okay, I'm going to do this, and just supporting each other. And around races when we are trying to do something on similar days, in some ways it makes it great. Like at Diagonal des Fous, we had a really fun time training on the course together in the weeks leading up to the race. Even though we weren't running together, we still like stayed at the same sort of like hut on our training run. So we started around the same time and then would meet each other later. And that just makes it so much more fun to have like a travel companion who has the same schedule as you. Because I think maybe what other people might struggle with is like going to Reunion Island 3 weeks ahead of your race on your own might not be that fun, but when you're with your partner, it's way more fun. And kind of trading that cool part for that stress that comes with the race week, and both of us kind of having our own objectives, but wanting to support the other one. It's something we're still trying to figure out, honestly. I don't think it'll ever be easy, but we do realize like how lucky we are that we get to share so many of those things together that a lot of people don't get to share with their partners.
Yeah. I have a lot of teammates who are couples, by chance, really, like that they like were both signed by our team. And I'm a little envious because it's like, oh, cool. Like you can be away from home for 6 weeks, and you're both coming to Europe to train, maybe for the same race, maybe for different races. And like, that's definitely a little bit of a privilege, a sneaky privilege, versus like, I have to, if I make that choice, it's like, I'm leaving my dog, mm-hmm. who's important, but also like my husband, and just being like, I've got to go do this thing. I'll be back in a month. Mm-hmm. Like, peace out. Like that is also like very difficult.
Yeah. But do you find that you guys are able to balance like your own training goals with the other person's? Or like, do you ever find yourself being like, oh man, like he's out doing this, so I should probably go do this? Or is it really easy to stay like on track with your own goals and not get like caught up in the other's training or wanting to do some cool thing together? Just because I know a lot of couples kind of deal with that where they're like, oh man, like he's out doing this, so I need to go do this. Or maybe we both deprioritize our training so we can go do something together. So I wonder how that balances too.
Yeah, I think we're both pretty good at, like, we both kind of stick to our schedule pretty
Nice.
well.
They're professionals.
Yeah.
Treat it professionally. That's good. That's how it should
I
be.
mean, Sharon was also coached by Coop, and we both like obviously have a great relationship with Coop. So our training isn't the same. Like we, for example, before diagonal day food, we're like, okay, we need to have these long days on the same day because logistically it's not going to work any other way. But otherwise we didn't have exactly the same training because I was coming off of OCC and he was coming off of UTMB. So obviously there was some times when I was doing a little bit more because I kind of had that wiggle room and he was still, trying to play it on the safer side coming off UTMB. But we do, like, if we have an easy day on the same day, we'll do something together, or sometimes switch something around when we're like, okay, we haven't been skiing together in 2 weeks. Like, let's flip something around so we can kind of enjoy the day together. But yeah, we've kind of, when we first started dating, it was long distance. So I was coming to France a lot to visit him. And then it just made sense to just train together because I was only there for 3 or 4 days. And at some point we realized that we spend the entire day together, and we do not live in a large house, is very small, especially compared to the US standards. So we spend the entire day like very close to each other. So our training time now is just like sacred alone time, unless it's predefined that we're going to do something together. Otherwise, it's just better everyone gets there, like they go get their Zoomies out and we, do our own thing. So we learned that after a lot of runs that didn't end with someone being happy.
We 100% had that happen. During the pandemic. Steven and I were living in this tiny apartment and we were just like home together all the time. And we'd like drive to Trailhead together and I'd be like, cool, I'm running 2 hours in this direction. I'll see you back at the car. And we would literally carpool and then run in opposite directions and then re-meet back up afterwards. Because I was like, this is my only alone time. So I totally get that. You've got other times to spend in the house. Is Lavaredo the same week as Western States again this year?
He will finish maybe at the same time we start Western States. Okay. I tried to do the math in my head. So I'll need someone at the escarpment to tell me what happened. So I think
when Keely ran, I think when it was at Keely where you
when I ran it, I think it was the same day.
And Kelly, it was you guys, but I think we knew your results when we started. So my guess is that you'll know how he's done like right before you start Western States.
Yeah.
We'll plant someone on the escarpment for you. Don't worry.
Worst case, I'll run up there. Don't worry. We'll
Keely'll come let you know.
Last year, the 90K was like 2 days before. So I was up all night, like the 2 nights before Western States following him. This time I'll have to like
get a little bit of
someone take my phone before I go to bed.
Yeah.
We'll call Topher and Kim and make sure we can arrange that. We want to touch on canyons a little bit, and then we'll do some rapid fire and get you out of here. You obviously absolutely smashed Canyons 100K. It was pretty incredible to watch. And this was another question that actually came in from one of our listeners, which I thought was really interesting. Like, you've obviously been doing this for a while. You've been doing really well for a while. You've had a string of really amazing performances, but they were wondering, like, just independent of that, like, you're still human. Like, what's your biggest fear going into any race? And maybe that changes depending on the stage, right? Western States versus a local race at home might feel a little bit different, or UTMB might feel a little bit different, but kind of, you're still human. Like, what kind of is that fear as you head into any big race?
I think heading into a big race, which I guess has settled down a little bit more, just maybe even, after each successive race, but I was you still have this like doubt, like, what if that was a fluke? What if those last 3 races just were like, I randomly had just a really good day and that's never going to happen again. That's always the like, little fear in the back of your head. And yeah, I think that's always going to be there. It's also kind of part of why you go to a race, right? See see what you can do another time. So it's not that I really want to get rid of that, because I think it brings some motivation, because each time you want to prove to yourself, like, no, I'm here, like I did the work. I'm capable of being here. But it's still the like little fear in the back of the head.
Yeah.
Like your success was like the exception, and the rest will be back to whatever the not exception is. Yeah. That is a real feeling.
Yeah. It's borderline imposter syndrome, but I like that you can like turn it around on its head and be like, nope, this isn't imposter syndrome anymore. This is actually motivation. And I'm here to like test myself once again. Like I'm choosing to test myself once again.
Yeah. I think I've gotten a lot better about, for sure, I'm in sort of a privileged position to say this, but like I can be on the start line, just be excited to like really race. And like, I'm not like super tied to the end result. And part of that is because I do have results in the past where I'm like, okay, if something goes wrong, it's not like my career ends. Like I still have this like kind of platform to stand on. And I think I've said this in other interviews, but like, I think that's something that isn't appreciated enough about like up and coming athletes, is like, they put so much on the line when they're there. Like maybe they have no results, but they like know in their head that they could. And that's way more stressful, I think, than me. I feel a bit like, okay, I can come and like kind of play like, okay, what am I going to do? Okay, well, if I mess up, it's not like totally the end of the world. I can still have kind of like a fun time in competition. And yeah, I think that's really hard when you're a newer athlete. And it's something I experienced a lot. As I mentioned, like I had so much anxiety in the earlier races that I did.
Yeah, I think it was an interview with Finn, I think. And I remember him leading you into the question. And I was like, I think Finn has it backwards. And that's kind of what you confirmed, that like it's almost easier when you've like had success, because he was like convinced that it was the opposite, that you've had success, so you have to continue to like prove that you belong, versus like the up and comers having to try to take big swings each and every time without like a designated landing pad.
Yeah. And it's also your mindset too. Like, I think I could be in this position and be really stressed that I have to like prove to everyone every time that I should do something. I don't know, but I've tried to just take it as like kind of like let it take the pressure off almost, because I almost have more like margin.
Yeah, I think reflecting on kind of like that definitely is like a mindset choice. And I'm wondering, like, and maybe canyons is an example of this. Like, what do you do when maybe it's not the race itself that's like in bad, that is bad in totality, but moments during a race or moments during training? Like, what do you do when you get into those low points or those funks? Like, how have you been able to kind of either refocus or get back into things?
I mean, the biggest low I can think of in recent memory is at Diagonal des Fous when we were starting the second night. And I just like lost it. I mean, I was holding it together emotionally, but then when I got to one of the last crew points, I saw the Coop was actually there crewing, and I just like lost it. I was just like crying, just bawling. For some reason, I was just exhausted and in so many ways. And by chance, the French TV captured it all on live TV. So everyone in France watched it and sent me messages about it after. But in that moment, actually, like Coop helped a lot in the way that he doesn't give rainbows and unicorns. And he was just like, you know what? You're a professional athlete. You're going to like basically suck it up and you're going to keep going. And that's the kind of thing that I respond well to. So sometimes it's just me being like hard on myself. Like, you're just going to like, you got to just deal with this. There's no like, oh, it's okay. It's fine. I'm more on the side of like, we just got to suck it up and like, you can do it. I think every race has different like situations of like how I try to find a way out of a low. I'm sure we all have like experience with that. Whether it's like a stomach thing, a muscle thing. It's just like finding small solutions and then seeing where that leads.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And I feel like we've all had our ups and downs. I still am not convinced I've really figured out how to get through the downs that well. But yeah, I feel like it's always a learning journey, which is super fun. So obviously on paper, Canyon looked awesome. We would love to hear like just a little bit from your lens. Like, how did you feel out there? Did you have any like downs there that you had to combat? And how did you feel crossing that finish line?
Yeah. Did you have more in the tank? That's what Keely wants to know.
No, I raced from the start, or like I wanted to just, yeah, I mean, going back, like I think I said like on, my social media post, like I was really happy with my training going into it. I didn't want to like pretend, like sandbag myself before the start. Like I was really happy with my training. I think it went super well. And it's it's some of the most running I've done like back to back ever.
People are impressed with your Strava, by the way.
Yeah, I got a few messages in the last few weeks, but like, to be honest, it was never, for me, it was like the end of each week. I'd be like, oh, wow. Oh, those numbers added up to that. Okay. It wasn't like I was shooting for something. I just kind of like went through each day. And at the end, looking back, like, last week when I was looking back, I was like, wow, that's really cool. Like I did a lot of work there and I'm really proud of that. So going into the race, I was like, okay, I have this like great training behind me. I just want to see like what I can do with that. So I was not trying to like save anything. I really just wanted to just see what was possible. Yeah, I've kind of said in the finish line interview, like I don't really have anything to say, which I think is like the best thing. It just, everything worked more or less. I mean, of course it wasn't perfect. Like I didn't feel amazing the whole time. That's the point. I felt really bad at the end because I did that to myself. But yeah, everything went like basically according to plan. Nothing unexpected happened. Just like a smooth race, which I haven't had many. I don't know. It's rare to have something that smooth. So that was just, I think, why I just felt so happy at the end. Of like, wow, okay, it worked. Yeah,
we're bringing our popcorn to Western States. We're very excited.
How's recovery? How's the recovery been?
Well, I just traveled to Flagstaff yesterday, so that was a bit, hectic. But otherwise, like, of course, I'm sore and beat up, but nothing crazy. Yeah, I mean, normal soreness, nothing like scary.
Perfect. That's what we want to hear. We're gonna like just take you through some rapid fire questions that came in from our listeners that we might have finessed a few extra ones in there. So we'll keep this nice and tight. So they want to know favorite White Mountain hut meal when you worked there.
To cook or eat?
Your choice. Dealer's choice.
Yep.
To eat was lasagna, and to cook, probably the turkey, because it was the easiest, because you didn't need to do anything. You just put it in the oven.
Perfect. How many grams for, I guess, as Keely would put, for the fueling nerds out there, how many grams of carbs per hour is your jam?
I'm going to do my calculation after this call, actually, but I think it's it was probably somewhere between 60 and 70 grams an hour. I know it's like really cool to do the like 150 grams per hour now, but I'm like a steady 60, 70, nothing more. I have a really touchy stomach.
I know I've watched Coop feed you cheese and bread sandwiches and cheese and butter, or I guess bread and butter sandwiches. Favorite race thus far?
The Mute.
Nice.
Or runner up is UTMB, which is it's our local race in the Maritime Alps.
Adding it to the list. Yeah. Favorite TNF shoe?
Summit Vective Pro. I mean, I did UTMB and Western States in that, and Canyons in that. So
perfect. Favorite geomorphic feature?
Oh, that's a really great question. Probably a moraine.
Sick. This is for insider scoop only. Why did you order a basketball and send it to Abby Hall's house in Flagstaff?
Because my new
I know
house,
this answer.
my new house has a basketball hoop, and Abby and I both used to play basketball. So did Keely. I was not nearly as talented as the two of them, but yeah, we've been planning to shoot some hoops while I'm here.
Sick. I love it. Favorite rock, so different than geomorphic feature.
I'm just going to go with granite because that's, white.
Nice.
Yeah.
Yeah. Favorite snack.
Ooh. I've been liking the berries in the US. We don't have access. Well, I guess we do have some berries, but there's just a lot of berries in the US. So I'll just go with that because it's relevant right now.
Yeah, I guess. That's something that I added. Was it really cool to beat a whole bunch of guys at canyons?
I mean, it was honestly cool to like run with a lot of them because I actually know there's more guys who've been in the sport, or at least at canyons, there's more guys who've been in the sport longer than the girls. So like I only just met MK during the first few K. Miles, sorry. But like I ran with like Cody Lind, like with Tim a little bit. Who else? I mean,
just people Yeah.
Yeah, there was just like more guys that I knew. So it was cool because I just felt like I knew them more. Yeah.
Love it. And then really important question. What are you most excited about while you're here in the US?
Oh, well, I mean, the food stuff is like, I think that's the easy out because there's so many like great food things that I miss. But I think the like bigger thing is it's just really nice to a few things. Like one is not having to give myself a pep talk before I speak to someone, which I think maybe people who haven't lived in other languages might not understand just how much stress that can bring if you're not really confident. You just have like every time I do something, I have to be like, okay, you can do it. Let's go. They'll understand you, hopefully. And just understanding everything super easily, like kind of this whole friction point of my life was removed when I'm in the US. And yeah, just everyone, I just feel really like around the races in the US, there's just so many excited and like genuinely just so like nice people. And not to say that there aren't in France, but it is a smaller community, I guess. So maybe that's part of it, is it's easier to know more people, like a larger percentage of the people. So yeah, those two things.
Yeah. And then final cue. This is one that we give everyone. What's one piece of advice you'd give your younger self?
I don't think I would want to tell myself anything because I think it's better to just like learn it. Because if you don't learn it firsthand, then it's not the same. Like even in my races, actually Dylan asked me about this after the race and I didn't think through the question at the time, but he asked like how I kind of have gotten to this point where things are like really well planned and really smooth. And reflecting on that is like, I messed up so many times. And now I know so well exactly what doesn't work. And if I hadn't messed up that many times, I wouldn't know that as well. So I think it's really important to mess up, and I wouldn't want to skip any of those steps.
Katie Schide keeping us on our toes. We've never had anyone tell us they wouldn't tell their younger self anything. And honestly, I'm inspired. I love that. You got to learn those lessons somehow.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that was a shock to me, but as she described her reasoning behind it, made total sense.
Yeah. Some lessons are hard to learn, but you're right. You don't get to where you are without years of experience behind you. So that was really special. And again, we can't wait to follow Katie Schide this season. Welcoming her back to Auburn and Olympic Valley for Western States. We'll be there to cheer her on in person. And honestly, I cannot wait.
Yeah, it's going to be such a fun time in June.
Well, I guess to end this thing, let's talk quickly about, if we've had a race win or a favorite snack recently, because the folks over at the feed are keeping us well fueled and hydrated. I actually like, they always have really cool deals, I found. And when I put in my race day order, this past week, I also ordered, or they gave me like a very discounted like sample pack for the Element electrolyte drink. And I've got a lot of friends who like it and a lot of athletes who like it a lot. It's quite salty, but I'm excited. It's like I think it's like all 10 flavors or 8 flavors. And I haven't gotten to try any of it. So I'm excited to have that added to my cart as a little bonus.
Yeah, that'll be super fun. I like them too. So hopefully you also like them.
Yeah, we'll see. Any nutrition wins on your front, or favorite snacks for the move or for the bachelorette party?
This week was so crazy that I ran a workout at 4:30 p.m., which for me is crazy, but not for people like Abby Hall, who likes to run after dinner. And then I also had to do my second long run of the weekend at like 5:30 p.m. on Sunday. And yeah, so I was just like, but I was still like fueling. So I was just trying all sorts of stuff. And I would just say, like, even if you're thrown off, like, still bring fuel, still plan the run, like, still do everything that you should do. Don't be like, oh, well, because this is so jumbled, I'm not going to bring fuel. Like, I had that thought because it was requiring me to like dig for fuel. I had no clue where I put it, but yeah, I like packed it. I did a little aid station when I would bring the dogs back, and it all sat really well. It was like really good gut training. And yeah, I think my favorite goo that I had that evening was strawberry banana, which I've said before, but I'm back on that kick. So
You're all ready. You're already with the tropical flavors for Transvolcania. We're going to take you into Society Slam. I'll read the first one here. And it says, hi, love the pod. Was wondering if you have any favorite Northeastern trail races, Canadian and or American. They're doing the Quebec Mega Trail 50K this year and want to scope out races for next year, probably aiming for another 50K or 50-mile race. I know I've only done a couple of races out east since, despite having lived out east at various times during my life, I've only done a couple trail races out there. And like the most recent one I think I did was the Cayuga 50 mile in Ithaca, New York, which was a really great race and a really fun race weekend.
Yeah, I've done a lot out east back when I first started in trail running. I would say the first two that come to mind that are both 50K distances, and they are gnarly. They will prepare you well for your QMT 50K or for any other race you're doing in Canada. One is called the Heiner Challenge. It's a 50K in central Pennsylvania.
I've heard that one's really cool. I've heard it's gnarly.
Cool, really gnarly. And then the other one's called Call of the Wilds Marathon. It's part of the Eastern States 100. It's run the same weekend. So the vibe is really fun. The trail, again, really gnarly. Ends with a climb that is legit like 1,700 feet in a mile. I might be hyperbolizing, but it's like so steep that I could see the lead male who was close to the top, but he beat me by 10 minutes because it's just so steep and it's just straight. And you're like, oh my God.
That's
so
wild.
I called my race recap was Crawl of the Wilds because I had to crawl that last hill. So, but I mean, they're both hard, but the community around them, hands down, it's amazing. Like, I love the Central PA community. So again, I'm biased, but I really liked both of those races and they're super gnarly. So if you want to get a good kick in the butt.
Yeah, and I've always wanted to do Ultra Trail Haricana as well, over kind of in that same like Quebec Mega Trail area-ish. And so it's like that's something that I'm always kind of keeping on my radar. Getting back out there for something at some point would be really cool.
Same. Yeah. The second Society Slam is someone I'll keep anonymous, but they sent this to me after their first time fueling for a long run. First time.
Dang.
Yeah. They said, OMG, exclamation point, explanation point. This was the first time I've ever felt truly confident on a longer distance. I took 1 bottle of water, 1 of electrolytes, and 1 of nutrition, 4 NAC waffles, which worked out to about 300 calories or 40 grams of carbs per hour. Made such a difference. I felt amazing and didn't hit any walls. Even though it was a challenging run, I felt completely in control. Nutrition really does make all of the difference. Thanks for the encouragement on not holding back on nutrition.
That's amazing. And I will just say too, like, it can feel daunting at first and it can also not feel great at first too. Just like your stomach has to get used to fueling while you run, both in training so that you can do it for races. You can't really go 0 to hero on it. So yeah, starting with something as simple as 400 grams of carbohydrates per hour. And then maybe that becomes 50 to 60 to, these people who are doing more like, 80 to 90 grams per hour. Like, you have to work your way up there. Your gut is really trainable. And so if you've got a long race coming up, you can start doing that like 3 to 6 weeks out, even just because your gut changes over pretty quickly, as far as like cells go. So train your gut. Don't don't like blow your long race because you never did any sort of like eating or fueling on your long runs and then just hoped it would work on race day.
Yeah. Don't make all of our mistakes. That's why we tell you about them.
Yeah, exactly. We might not tell our younger self all of the secrets, but we're not here to gatekeep either. So we'll tell you everything we wish our younger self knew. How's that? I think so. The next time you'll hear from us, we'll have been in Transvolcania. We'll have done the race. We'll have made it from point A to point B, hopefully, with all of our limbs intact and smiles on our faces for the most part. And we can't wait to share that experience with you. Until next time, we'll catch you out on the trails.